Travelin Dug.
Hello, friends. Good to see you again. Would you care to join me on a trip to St. Joseph, Missouri to look at the Patee House Museum? Why, here's the plaque commemorating its construction in 1858. It is an enormous-sized building that is now filled with a museum. And it's not just any museum. It's something like, well, the Smithsonian of the Midwest. The finest hotel west of the Mississippi. There it is in 1858. It was also the original stop for, you guessed it, the Pony Express. And here's one of the very Overland Express stagecoaches that carried that mail. The Pony Express began in this room on April 3rd of 1860. History abounds. And here's the office where you would come to drop off your mail or telegrams. And here's the packet steamer from Hannibal to St. Joseph that used to haul the mail. And that's a Buffalo. Hey, Buffalo. The first floor of the Patee House Hotel is set up as a small village with various shops and stores that you can look through. Here we have a pharmacist or a dispensary or a chemist shop from the early days. And right next door is this barbershop with a collection of shaving mugs. You always want to look your best. Not sure that blow dryer is period correct. Look at those prices. And at least your barber is certified to be cutting hair. Hopefully certified in Missouri. Yes, it's a Missouri barber certificate. Over here's a collection of inkwells and writing utensils. Each shop having its own theme. Ooh, there's a sign for burglar alarms. We must be in some sort of a bank. Why, yes, here are some various old-timey banknotes. Here we see Dr. Walter Cronkite's dental office, the father of the famous newscaster Walter Cronkite, who was from St. Joseph. And here we are in yet another bank or somewhere with a cashier window. Perhaps an assay office. It's Grandma Pat! Even in St. Joe. Here we are at a store selling various musical instruments and appliances like phonograph records, and there's a violin. Of course, none of these items are actually for sale. They're just examples of various stores and shops which might have appeared in these times. There's a fine-looking organ. Over here we see cameras and photographic equipment of the period. Look at that old camera. Why, here's a general store, and look at all the various and the sundry items we can find here. Cooking things, tools, cigars, watches, more cigars. These are in boxes now. Tobacco, probably some chewing tobacco. Here's some fine dinnerware and other household implements, stemware. Here's a ladies' ensemble. Now, one of the most interesting parts of this entire museum, at least to Travelin Dug that is the police station area. And the reason it's so interesting is because it contains many actual historic artifacts like this piece of rope used in the last lynching that ever took place in St. Joseph. This is an actual picture of that lynching and the crowd that gathered. Scary times, terrible things happened back in the day. And this is the photo of a man who confessed to attacking someone, and he is the same man who was hung in the tree there in the picture previously. These are spurs worn by chickens during cockfighting. A lot of gambling went on around the cockfighting. Here's an actual polygraph lie detector machine. My, isn't that interesting to see? Part of the St. Joseph Police Department. Now this case here that we will begin to peruse. Here's the last legal hanging, not the lynching we saw before, but an actual legal hanging that took place in St. Joe, with various historic markers, and there's a card you can read that gives you the details. This collection is filled with various items and implements used in various crimes around the St. Joseph area over the history of its existence. Each of these guns has a marker denoting who it belonged to and the crime it was used in. But not to be outdone by that, we also see things like a baseball bat, and a rifle, and a power drill, and an axe, and more guns. Again, each with a card detailing how they were used. There's a straight razor and a couple of butcher knives and a couple of hammers. All items used, implements used in actual crimes in St. Joseph. Here's a collection of badges and burglar tools, although some of those look like shivs. Now here is a commemorative Pony Express rifle. There's the official certificate of authenticity. What a beauty. Now another part of the museum is set up like the interior of an olden-timey home. As we walk through the bedroom, we come through and find another fine pipe organ there. And here's the lavatory, complete with the water heater in the corner and a high flush tank. Look at that bathtub. And here's the kitchen area where we might meet for a little dinner. And in here, a parlor, yet another keyboard of some type, and a collection of spoons. There's a sleigh for Santa, and now we'll transition out of the historic parts of the inner home and we'll start to see some historic vehicles like these wagons. Here's a collection of Civil War memorabilia, including a soldier's uniform and the sword of Nathan S. Elliott, First Lieutenant. There's a Remington rifle with bayonet. Here's a collection of spittoons or cuspidors. And over here, some implements for mining like a pan. Some more historic vehicles like a real street car and an old-timey race car. Here's a horse-drawn hearse. Creepy. And here's an entire steam locomotive located inside the museum. My goodness, isn't that exciting? If you're a train lover or no one, they'll want to see this. Now we see some historic vehicles like this old truck and this Fiat Bertone X, one of 9 made. You read on the card here that the actor Josh Brolin really liked this car. Some more old-timey cars like you might have seen in a Bonnie and Clyde movie. And over here, a couple of more historic fire engines. And here's a Willys Jeep. Before there was Jeep, there was Willys Jeep, which is the original Jeep. Probably circa World War II. There's also a room dedicated to toys and games. Here's a selection of various toys and items you can see in that room, including this hand-built merry-go-round. We'll see it spin around in just a second. Why, that's a dinosaur. And look at that there. That's a Ferris wheel. Here comes that merry-go-round. Oh my, look at the fun and excitement. If you thought that was fun and exciting, you'll love this full-size merry-go-round located inside the museum. Look at those kids having fun riding that merry-go-round. There's an American eagle. Thanks for the wave. There's some horses. I see an elephant, a rhinoceros. I think that there was a raptor. Now here's a hall of fame of famous outlaws and cowboys in this one room, including some memorabilia. I don't think any of this dates back to the actual people. It's more for examples of things that they would have seen and done and been around. Although there are a few items in here which are actual historic artifacts. There's another fine gold pan. Ooh, and a good looking bowler hat. How about a cow skull? Some various items and implements. And of course, the infamous Jesse James there. This is a holster and pistol marked as though it belonged to the infamous female outlaw Belle Starr. And of course, the grand finale of the tour of the Patee House is the actual house where Jesse James was murdered, which begins with these. Here's a picture of Jesse after he had been shot. And this case contains various artifacts belonging to Jesse and Frank, including Jesse James' shaving mug. Here's a portrait painted to give an example of the murder, and this is the actual wall hanging and hole in the wall where the bullet went through after it went through Jesse. This is not the actual gun, but it is the same make and model as the one used to murder Jesse James. Here we see various furnishings and implements that belonged in the Jesse James household. And there's a portrait. That was Frank, and that one's Jesse there. And here we see a historical commemoration of the various times that the body of Jesse James has been disinterred to examine, and the reinterment ceremonies and funerals that you can see pictures of there. Been a long-standing controversy about whether the man killed in this house and buried in this grave were actually Jesse James or someone else. Here we see wood fragments and the handles from the original coffin of Jesse James. Again, there's another picture of Jesse in death. And a lead plate which topped the coffin. As we come around the corner here, you'll see at the lower left hand a bullet that they believe came from Jesse's right lung. It was found in the chest area of the original coffin. This is not the bullet that killed Jesse, but it would have probably been from the robbery in, Minnesota? There it is. And over here is Jesse James' tie pin, also found in the chest area of the coffin. Here we see some more historical artifacts having to do with the old Westy times. And on this card you see a triangular chunk of wood, and this is actually a piece of the original chair Jesse James was standing on when he was killed by Bob Ford. Wow, can you smell the history? Now, this is a cast of Jesse James' skull, not his actual skull, but a replica showing the entry point of the bullet that killed him. This is from one of the examinations that they did, trying to ascertain whether or not the Jesse James that was killed in this house and buried in his grave is the actual Jesse James or an imposter. Fascinating stuff. Well, I hope you enjoyed our time at the Patee House Museum with Grandma Pat. Please like, subscribe, comment, share, and join us again real soon. Adios.